Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Monday, December 9th, 2019. Madam Vice Chair, would you lead us in this Pledge of Allegiance?
Certainly. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello all, and sorry for the late start. We're minus 2 members, and we'll get started and try to go through this as quickly as possible. Starting at 7, organization and Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll read the mail, followed by department board updates for the police department and the highway department, library construction grant, and Littleton Water Department homeroom petition, followed by item number 3, which is public input, members updates, and the HCA negotiations update. Following that, item number 4 is Church Meadows lease with Jenny Merrill. We want to talk about getting that done. It's been a while. Followed by item number 5, the 2021 budget submission, the Board of Selectmen and TA and Town Council. What was going to be 7:45. Item number 6, annual license renewals for all alcoholic beverages, Class 1 and Class 2, common victualers license, automatic amusement devices, and so forth. Followed by 6, under the Town Administrator, A, EE grant authorization, B, Green Communities Annual Report submission, C, accept PRC, the Pocket Recs donations, D, accept Elder and Human Resources gift donations, followed by minutes and then adjournment. Nina Mail?
Thank you. The board received a letter from Comcast regarding changes in Xfinity services and prices which go into effect December 20th, 2019. A letter from the Framingham Mayor, Dr. Yvonne Spicer, thanking Littleton for participating in the Metropolitan Planning Organization's fall election. A letter from KP Law, our current counsel for Labor Council, regarding a rate increase of $5 per hour. A letter from Nicole Lorenzen, Assistant Director of Elder and Human Services, regarding Marriott Courtyard's Breakfast with Santa, and a flyer from Tim Melchinsky, PRCE, regarding Holiday Helpers Fun Run, December 8th. Also, Tavern in the Square Dining for a Cause, Tuesday, December 3rd. While the dates have already passed for these events, we wanted to highlight to the public some of the recent excellent work of our departments. Letter from the Mass Municipal Association regarding the town of Littleton being awarded first place for communities our size in the Mass Municipal Association's annual town report contest. Kudos to Diane Dickerson and to Nancy Hilsinger, Kirby Dolak, and Jim Donnelly for their assistance to Diane. Many thanks to the various departments for their work in this process, and recognition also goes to former Assistant Town Administrator Anthony Ansaldi, who was a start for a revamped annual town report. Since then, and as the board knows, the town has been awarded first place twice.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Chief Penard?
Good evening. Tonight I'll be quick. All of you are familiar with Brian Buck. Brian's been with us just over a year now. We appointed him to a full-time dispatch position November 15th last year. Brian has proved himself with us in the dispatch center. He is certified to work as a part-time police officer, so I'd look to have you appoint him as a part-time police officer, so Brian can help augment the patrol staff.
Questions from the board?
No,
No?
you just had another retirement or resignation.
We did, yeah.
Reserve officer for a long time, reserve officer. So.
Yeah, Rich Landers resigned this week. He's taken on a new role with Concord Police Department Communication Center, so.
More responsibility.
Yeah, he's taking on the accreditation manager and the supervisor of the comm center, so.
Good for him.
He, his experience and knowledge will be kind of tough to replace, but I'm sure we'll have some great candidates coming up later on to fill that void.
Yeah. Extend our appreciation to him through you, but certainly I think Brian would be a good addition to help augment.
Nice to have you aboard.
Certainly.
Again.
Welcome.
Ryan's the second one in that the
Congratulations.
round of 4 that we're going to have. 2 backgrounds are being done on the next 2 already, and probably next month we'll be in with 2 others.
Look for motion then.
Move that the Board of Selectmen appoint Brian Buck as Reserve Officer for the Littleton Police Department.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Brian. Keep it up, thanks. A moral support.
Too big. This is great.
Thanks, guys.
I said I gotta hold your hand and guide you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's lonely up here by myself, you know.
I'm here for you, buddy. Shadow of your former self.
That's why it's lonely. You got half of me now.
So true.
So, it's been a few months now. Well, obviously, so this is the Beaverbrook Great Road intersection. So, since I've been here, I think I've gotten calls monthly or bi-monthly about people asking what we can do about this, safety issue, dangerous intersection. So, a few months back, the chief and I met with Joe Frawley from MassDOT, District 3, to kind of go over the intersection, what could be done. He was going to look into trying to do some signage, some road markings. So, but in the meantime, I reached out to Fuss and O'Neill, who's currently doing the design on our Foster Street tip project. And they said, well, why don't we, do up a couple conceptuals, bring them to MassDOT and see what they think about maybe, improving the intersection. So in the meantime, we had them do a traffic study of the intersection. It revealed that we have a level of service F for Beaverbrook Road, which is the worst,
Which is,
which is an F. So basically, based on that information, we put together a couple conceptuals. One was a roundabout, one was a traffic signal. So I went down with Fuss and O'Neill in September to meet with MassDOT. Their opinion was they don't want a traffic signal because it's hugely costly for them to maintain those. And if they wouldn't support a project with a traffic signal unless there was a very, very good legitimate reason why to have a traffic signal. So with that information, we came back, we kind of revised these conceptuals just a little bit. This is 100% conceptual at this point. This is not a design. This is nothing more than just some
Pretty
lines
picture.
on a paper. Pretty picture. But the reason I'm here in front of you folks is to basically get your support to move this project forward. So the state, we asked the state to build it. They said no. They said, what we should do is submit this for a TIP project. This is a very, very good candidate because of how dangerous this intersection is. This should streamline beautifully. We actually might even be able to get this built before Foster Street. That's how much easier this is because it's an F. That being said, this is about a $3 million project to construct. So we use the 10% rule. It's about $300,000 to design this. I do not have $300,000 in my budget to do this design. So if the board wants to move forward with this, we would need to figure out an alternative. My thought would be maybe using snow and ice money next fall or adding it to the capital. This isn't something that I'm looking to design right now. This is a 18-month process to get it approved on the tip and then put into design. But I don't want to move forward. It does cost us about $10,000, $15,000 to get it onto the tip. I don't want to spend that if the board doesn't have the appetite to want to push this farther.
can I ask why they wouldn't consider a traffic light? Take the costs out of it.
Because there's,
Trying to get away from them, though.
yeah, so the state of Massachusetts is trying to get away from traffic signals. Traffic signals are no safer. In fact, a traffic signal is actually less safe than this roundabout design. So they're more expensive and they're no safer than than a roundabout. So those are basically the two key points of why they don't want to use traffic signals here. If you have the space, now obviously space would be a major problem if there's no space. The nice thing about this place is Old Great Road and Great Road, everything in between is all still state-owned. So the state has a huge, huge right-of-way.
Which is why it's skewed towards that
This is
side
why
of
it's
the road.
skewed up the hill.
right side.
Correct.
Would this help better improve the flow of traffic, Chris, compared to a traffic signal?
So, so what'll happen is, so the reason this is a 2 two-leg roundabout, and it would end up, if it was to be a traffic signal, it would have to be a two-leg traffic signal, because there's just so much traffic on Great Road. It would improve the coming out of Beaverbrook Road better than
Light.
a light, correct. And it's more safe. So what ends up happening is even at a traffic light, you end up having it controlled, but the guy coming in and all of a sudden it's a yellow and he tries to race it, or he tries to cut off. So there is still that hazard, where here, this is 20 miles an hour regardless of it, you can't go around this thing any faster than 20 miles an hour. So that's the, yes, you can, but it's not gonna end well.
Right?
So there's far fewer conflict points in the roundabout design as opposed to a traffic signal. And now we could submit a traffic signal design. Mass DOT will not support it, which means it will not go onto the tip. Because Mass
We'll
DOT
fully
has to,
fund
what's that?
So we would fully fund that.
Yeah. If Mass DOT says it, and honestly, I didn't ask that
It's on a
question.
state road.
Yeah, Mass DOT may not say yes. It does meet all of the warrants for traffic improvement at the intersection, whether it be a roundabout or a light. But they expressed their opinion.
I guess my reservation comes, I have to go through the Concord Rotary almost every
This is
single.
very, very different than the Concord Rotary. That's the Rotary. This is a roundabout. Much, much
Sterling?
smaller.
So just like Sterling.
Yes.
Further,
This
yeah.
is only 150-foot diameter on the inside. And so what it's going to do, because this is a two-leg, as it's proposed here, the east-west, I guess it would be the east flow on Great Road, it actually has kind of a dedicated lane. So if you're going straight, you can kind of just stay in it. All you're going to do is veer around a little bit and then go straight as if nothing was there. What it's going to do is it's going to help the Beaverbrook traffic flow into Great Road. I mean, there's some points at the traffic study revealed, like 15-minute wait times in the worst part of congestion on Beaverbrook. So, and that's hugely dangerous.
Something has to be done, I agree with it, but I could just see someone coming down Beaverbrook Road, and they get on the roundabout, and then they have to merge with that traffic that's coming from Groton and Pepperell and Townsend, and they have to get in that lane, and it's, one car beats the other car. Granted, you're going 20 miles an hour, so maybe that's the good part of it.
Yeah. I mean, there's been numerous studies, like I said, Mass DOT, this is what they're pushing for, roundabouts first. And so that's why this is why I'm in front of you folks. I don't want to use taxpayer money, the town's money, to push us down the road, and then not everybody's supporting it.
Well, don't get me wrong, I would support it, because something has to get done, just from my, I have my own reservations, but I'm not an engineer, and I don't study traffic, so.
Just create an opportunity for us to meet other Mass Works and Safe Streets and all that
Yeah,
other
so
stuff.
what this will do, so this project would be considered a complete streets project, so we would have sidewalks both sides of the road, bike lanes on both sides of the road. And what it's actually gonna allow us to do is we can then try to push the state, because we'll have this done and we have the light at the point done, we're then gonna try to put pressure on the state to do the spot in between, specifically the bridge. And they know that's a problem. We have had this
bottlenecks.
conversation with them. They know it is. It's a huge cost to them to reconstruct that the way the wetlands are on both sides. But
It's been done.
They know it
yeah,
has to be.
they know it has to be done with this here, and with the other one, we're gonna try to push
Just over at
them.
Ornac, over in Concord,
Yeah.
117.
Not to mention, we do not have water main in this neighborhood, this stretch of road, and we would actually have, I've talked to the water department
Oh,
about
you open it?
extending water main up across, which then will be a lot closer to be able to tying into the point, which at that point would end up having a huge resilience factor to their system, because there's technically a bottleneck on the other side of town. This would allow it to loop if something ever happened on the other side of town with a water main, so. It's kind of all good things for everybody involved.
Yeah, while the road's open, we're gonna try to take
Well,
care
yeah,
of everything.
exactly. While we're destroying the whole place. And this, as it's proposed, has no right-of-way impacts to any abutters, no.
It's true.
So that's a good thing.
I like it.
I would say, go ahead, you're gonna get the support from us, so.
Yeah, so I just want, so when you see it, it won't be on this capital for the spring, but at some point, I'm gonna have to come back and request the design funding, and I just want you to,
So the 10 to 15 is something
I have that now. I've already have that set aside in my current budget.
Okay,
Yeah, because I set aside about 100,000 a year for various design projects.
so this would be part of
This
that.
will be part of that. But the moving forward, actually, once we get on the tip, I'll then come back before you, kind of like I did with Foster Street. We'll come back for 25% design funding, and then 100%. I haven't come back for 100% yet for design funding, but 100%. But at that point, we'll have to figure out how to pay for it. I just don't have that kind of cash. I wish I did.
You do too?
Just to make the future conversations on the subject as streamlined as possible, and if the board is willing, I would propose a motion that the board support moving forward with this roundabout concept plan at.
No, well, it would just be
A design.
A design, yeah, because a design proposal to be placed onto attempted to be placed on the tip.
What he said.
However that wants to work. I just don't want to, I don't want to
I think that's a good
hamstring us
idea.
into it
So
round.
moved.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
You're gonna type it, right?
Yeah.
Not really. Someone else helps us. Sue helps us with that. Thank you.
Did you move it?
Yeah, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve a proposed design plan for the Great Road Beaverbrook intersection.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. A lot of work put into it, appreciate it.
2C, Department and Board updates on library construction grant contract and agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There were a number of provisions in the grant agreement from the Mass Board of Library Commissioners, specifically 38 unique items. And not only do I need to seek approval to sign the grant because of the way our policies are written, but also simply because of the fact that it is so prescriptive, that it would be important for the board not only to see the list, but have an opportunity to discuss it. And
I have questions
Please.
about this. So I read through this, some of the language we expected, planned for minimum operational life of 20 years and whatnot. But on paragraph 3, it says, should the applicant fail to be certified by the board to receive state aid during the period in which the grant contract and agreement is in effect until project completion and final payment, this will be considered a breach of the contract. So what does that entail as far as receiving state aid? Like, what exactly does that mean?
there's a specific set of criteria that libraries are required to meet. It's called the minimum, it's MAR is the abbreviation. It's called the MAR, and the actual acronym and what it stands for at the moment is escaping me, but it's the minimum aid. I'm not entirely sure what the A and the R stand for at the moment, but I don't believe it is, but I could be mistaken. Perhaps it is. That, in essence, cities and towns are required to meet the MAR or receive a waiver from the state in meeting the standards. And those standards relate to funding. Those standards relate to circulation and books. We could look them up tonight to find what is available on the state's website relating to meeting the MAR, but in large part, it's a funding requirement and making sure that resources of libraries are maintained at adequate levels.
Is it something they currently do?
My understanding is that we
Okay.
have met the MAR, yes.
Okay. So that was one question. My other question was paragraph 9, which is an assurance that the OPM, architect, and other contractors of an approved library, public library project will be selected using the procedures as outlined by the Designer Selection Board under the provisions of the MGL, Chapter 70, Sections 44 through 58. Did we do that?
We are in the process of doing that, and if we haven't completed it yet, that's being spearheaded by the Permanent Municipal Buildings Committee.
Okay.
And it's a procurement provision that requires that we go through what is referenced here, the designer selection procedures. The town has designer selection procedures outlined, and we're required to follow them.
So they don't already have a designer selected?
They have an owner's project manager and
Yeah.
are going through the process or are at the tail end or completed the process to select a designer. I'd have to
Oh, okay,
check in to see where they are exactly in that process.
okay. What was my other question? Paragraph 11, insurance that the applicant will be in compliance with Executive Order 524 establishing the Massachusetts Supplier Diversity Program.
Much less familiar with that one.
I don't know what that means.
Must not discriminate.
Please.
Yeah, that's the, when you're accepting state funding for a construction project, you need to comply with the minimum requirement for minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses and try to solicit those businesses.
Okay,
I can't remember what the percentage is at this point.
okay. So when they say applicant, do they mean the town of Littleton, or do they mean the town as a municipality as a whole?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And are we already in compliance with that, I presume, or?
So we'll be incorporating those into the bid documents.
Okay,
For trying to hire public contractors.
okay.
That falls all back on chapter 30, I would imagine, right? Anything procurement?
Well, it's 7C, not 30B, and Jenny, come to think of it, would have a more up-to-date, perhaps, status on where PMBC is in terms of selecting a designer.
Yeah, I'm looking that up right
Oh, sorry.
now. That's okay.
And I guess it was just that Executive Order 526. And an assurance that the building will be designed according to 521 CMR, but we don't have that, we don't have the architect yet, so that's something that can easily,
Correct, and I think that one is specifically talking about AAB, which is essentially the minimum requirements for accessibility
okay,
for buildings,
all right.
which is a requirement we must follow.
All right,
No,
and,
so we do Johnson Roberts as the architect.
That's right. I don't know why, yeah, that's correct.
so they are, so,
We
but,
do have an architect, perhaps I'm thinking of the design build, the CM at risk, yes, that's right. So presumably, at some point when we hired Johnson and Roberts, we followed the provisions of 7C.
You did.
we did?
Thank you.
Okay, all right, and, an assurance that the completed project will meet or exceed a building efficiency rating of 65%. That will be part of the, PMBC would assure that through the design and the construction okay,
And PMBC has received a copy of this, they're familiar with the terminology on this, and, I would say that anything that falls into their design criteria, and we could certainly send them a note accordingly, they would be asked to follow through with.
okay, so, I mean, it shouldn't be a problem.
No, I don't.
Based on the, okay.
so.
And then I guess my only other question was about signing the contract, because the Board of Selectmen assigned originally the grant submission
mean,
application, so
The board
are we
could,
supposed to sign this, or you're supposed to sign
my
it?
understanding, and Jenny, correct me if I'm wrong, is that it doesn't make a material difference. In the case of these standard contracts with the Commonwealth, there's only one small, very, very small fine line at the bottom, so fitting a number of signatures would be a little challenging. But it's up to you. You can authorize me to sign, you could authorize the chair to sign. However you wish to do it is completely fine. Thanks, Jen. It's easier when I go into the office tomorrow to just sign and send it off.
Right, well, but on this page though, Nina,
Oh,
for the
that is
agreement itself,
That is another section, so,
because it says title and board/committee, so,
I mean, on any document, and again, this is another option for Jenny to correct me, but on any document, I can always write as authorized by the Board of Selectmen
Yeah,
on the
that's-
date.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah.
I just was curious about that. Okay,
it's a generic form.
yeah. All right,
Anything, Chuck?
MAR stands for Municipal Appropriation Requirements.
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
You brain. Yeah, I'm gifted.
So do we have a motion?
All right, so, move that the Board of Selectmen vote to acknowledge the terms of the agreement set forth by the Commonwealth through the Public Library Construction Program and vote to authorize the town administrator to sign the grant contract.
Second.
Motion been made and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. 2D, October 28th, special town meeting follow-up homeroom petition.
My understanding is that the Light and Water Commissioners have prepared with the General Manager of the Light and Water Department, Nick Lawler, this letter to be transmitted to the state for the home rule petition, and I believe it was in your packet as well. And it, at this point, is ready for vote, assuming the board is comfortable moving forward. I believe that the language that was authorized at town meeting is the exact language that's being presented, and no changes have been made. So, subject to further discussion, there's a motion ready to go.
Joe, is a question?
Hi, Joni Coleman, Whitcomb Ave. I just have a question about that paperwork. On the letter, it talks about 2 enclosures, and one was attached to the documentation for this meeting, the certified copy of town meeting vote, but then there was another reference to a copy of a memo to EOEA, and I was wondering if that is available?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have it with me, but I do have it available if,
Can it be added to the packet for this meeting?
it would be easier for me to supply it to you by email.
Okay, great.
If you'd like to email us or supply us your email address somehow.
Perfect. All right, thank you. Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Please.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote as authorized at the October 28th, 2019 special town meeting under Article 12 to petition our legislators in the general court to file a home rule petition for an act authorizing the town of Littleton to use certain land for construction of a water treatment facility without Article 97 restriction on such use.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.
Signatures now?
Okay, item number 3, public input.
Hi, Christine Nordhaus, Star Hill. I have 2 things. First, I attended last week a really awesome Free to the Public workshop by LCTV to learn how to use all their equipment. And anybody can take these workshops, and they are extraordinary. I just was so impressed, and it was really fun. And I learned how to use a ton of equipment, and the other people with me did as well. So I was never aware that those were available, and I think people should know about them, because now I can have my own TV show. And.
Good morning, Littleton.
And there's no censorship, just so you know. So that was one thing, but I just want to really huge kudos. I mean, like, Mark was awesome. It really was super fun. And it went by like that, and it was about 2 hours long. And then the other thing is less happy. I heard recently that Littleton Electric Light and Water Department is going to stop chartering Littleton BSA Scout Troop 19. They're considering ending the charter for that. That's the first all-girl Boy Scout troop in Littleton, who's going to lose their charter. LELWD also charters Troop 20, which is a Boy Scout troop here in town. And I mean, both of those troops, I'm sure you know, are extraordinary groups. And I was just wondering if you'd heard about that. They said something about town accounting, and if you had any insight or information about that, and why they might be.
This is the first I know of it at all.
Yeah, I haven't heard a thing.
And those are super active troops with lots of Littleton, great Littleton kids. Of course, my son one of them in Troop 20, but I just, yeah, I mean, it chartered the Troop 20 for years.
Right.
And so I was just curious about why.
Is there anything about it?
In Troop 19's all girl?
It's an all-girl, they're the first girls who have a path to Eagle Scout in Littleton. And, I mean, that's when I was a girl, I would have loved that opportunity. It's a huge opportunity for them, and for them to lose their charter, I mean, it's pretty awful. So I wanted to bring it up and see if anyone had heard anything. And if you could point me in the direction of who's Cage Drow or who to speak to about that.
That would be the commissioners.
Okay, I will.
I haven't heard. Going back to the LCTV, I took the very first course they took, and I wish I had kept up with it, because I thought it was fascinating too, because now I can't remember, you put me in front of the camera, I wouldn't know how to use it now, but
But that was like the old, like, black and whites.
That was
color
like
now,
the
Joe.
mice running in, no.
Every
It was
opportunity.
really cool. I mean, like how to use the cameras. He showed us how to like make great framed shots and like a lot of really, really interesting stuff.
We do talkies now.
I had a Polaroid camera, they would show me how to use that.
Well, you should, I mean, like the new cameras are like this big. They're really cool. They're really, really interesting, super high tech, but you should take it again. We could have a show. We could talk about the warrant, articles before town meeting and stuff. So
Anyone else?
Evening, Will Natto, 18 Robinson Road. I was just curious if there's going to be an opportunity for public input after the HCA negotiations. I think that's the primary reason I'm here.
I can
It's
talk
just
to
a
it.
matter of process.
So the HA negotiations, it was a discussion, I'm the member of the Board of Selectmen that's charged with negotiating the HCA's. And my update is that I have met with both of the party, actually, I've met with two out of the parties that were before us. I haven't met with the testing lab yet, with G7 yet. And that's just something I need to schedule. So there's nothing really that I have to offer that may be of concern.
Okay, just then.
It was on the agenda, so I totally understand your interest, Will, but,
Yeah.
yeah, there's, nothing to report. It was more just an update for the board, so that if I was further along the negotiations, I'd bring that before the board, and then I'm sure that we'd have some opportunity for some sort of, discussion. But my update is that it's not moving as quickly as I had hoped, and that's all on me, not on any of the parties. It's just you don't have to like nod. Can't wait till she has her own show. I hope it's a call-in show, Christine.
Oh, it will be.
Then if I may follow up,
Sure, please.
if there's just an estimated time frame of when there would be movement, and if so, if there would be an opportunity for input from town members at that point.
I mean, the process that we're going through right now is I'm sitting down with the individual parties and doing the negotiations. My thought is to bring it back to the board, discuss what we've negotiated, and hopefully be able to ratify something, and whether or not that's going to be open to the public. I don't know that that's part of the process, but you're certainly welcome to reach out to me. I know that you have reached out to the board previously, but
Okay.
by all means, if you have any interest, pretty sure you have my email address.
Yep.
Yep, yeah, feel free if you have any input or anything that you want to bring to my attention.
And as far as the time frame, just.
Right. Did Christine ask you to ask this question? I'm hoping to be able to sit down with all three parties by the end of this week so that we can try to have some closure. Ultimately, I wanted to try to have something on the agenda for next Monday that I could bring before the board that we could potentially make some decisions on, but I'm not certain that we're gonna be able to get to that point yet, but Christine's pretty optimistic that we can do that.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Anyone else?
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. Mr. Chairman, I sent a letter to this board of directors, or selectmen rather, with regards to the senior center. Asked the town administrator to make sure she forwarded a copy of the letter to each and every one of you. I emailed to Barbara McCray and to Nick Lawson. Did you get the letter?
I apologize, I haven't had an opportunity to forward it to the board, but I will definitely forward it this evening.
Anyway, have some real concerns about that. It's been in limbo for quite a while, since you transferred the $3 million that was set aside. I know with the Space Need Working Group, the LLB architect out of Worcester County got the contract. It seems to me that the small amount of work that was being requested, I don't know why it's taking the engineers so long to come back with data to this town with regard to the request that they were contracted for. It seems to me as though that it's such a small need that you're not on the high priority list of that information being gathered and brought back to the town here. I'm very disappointed in the contractor that's doing this job for the town of Littleton, because I think reasonable time turnaround on projects, it shouldn't be to the extent of where we are right now. And with this being passed, where is it on the list of concerns for this town? There are quite a few seniors that have real concern about the fact. I can't understand why that the selectmen would not send out a RFQ asking for the square footage that is needed for a center based on the data they had. I believe it was 15,000. That really doesn't have a bearing, in my opinion, with regards to the engineer looking at 255 Great Road there, because what you're asking what's available in Littleton. And the RFQ, in my opinion, should have been sent out a long time ago under the contract to send this out. It doesn't interfere with that, because what it does with the RFQ, it lets you know where in the town of Littleton there are building space that has the required footage that you're asking for. And to me, it's like this center for the town of Littleton has fell on deaf ears so long, it's pathetic. I've been here 22 years, and they was trying to get a center when I came here. So for 22 years, people have been fighting with the Board of Selectmen. In some cases, people made promises, yeah, we're going to do that, it fall by the wayside. I'm going to spearhead the idea of our seniors telling the people at the town meeting, there's quite a few selectmen, or all of you, you want this LSSS go, the Littleton Smart Sewer System to go through come May. You want people to vote for that. I can understand the library is no longer in a position of the picture to say, oh, the library is done. The next that you got in place is that you got this money in a holding pattern over here for the seniors. I throw a 4-item agenda list there for you there. The other was the police station, getting the police station repaired. I just don't understand why is it that all the communities around us is is building, renovating, or doing something. They got centers, but Port Littleton cannot get a center. It just irritates me to no end to try to understand why is it, as fine as this community is, why we don't care about the seniors in this town like they ought to care about it. And there's no reason on God's green earth, ladies and gentlemen, that we do not have a center in this town. The fact of having a center is better than having no center. And right now, we have no center. And based on the second room that we have in this building, I've taken the labor when the town gave us the building and renovated that space with the other space that we had, which was 2 rooms. And that's going back many, many years ago when I was the chair on there, and I worked around the clock, weekends and so forth, to do all the stuff, to put the cabinets that's in the hallway up there on the 2nd floor. I've seen a lot take place in this town, and I've seen where the people have supported the needs of this town. And we, as seniors, we have always been there supporting the needs of this town, whether it was fire, police, or whatever the case is. Why can't this town do what they ought to do for the seniors? Why do we have to beg? That's what I said to you. Why do we have to beg you to do something for us? We deserve to be treated right in this town. We're paying our taxes like everybody else is paying in this town. And I don't feel good whatsoever about having to come here and express myself in this way to this board. But I deem it necessary to come here and express this. Because you know why? Our seniors don't have the stamina to come and fight the bureaucracy in this town to try to get a little bit for themselves. As long as God give me breath, I'm going to be the one that's going to take it on and fight and keep you abreast as we go along. Because there's a need here, and this town needs to hear it. Thank you.
Nina, did that group that we've been working with, did we meet this month?
Yes, we did. And we had a nice opportunity to meet, and we talked about, it was actually on Friday, if I'm not mistaken, or Thursday. And it was a nice opportunity. We, so for the board's purposes, you all know, but chair and vice chair have been meeting with the chair and vice chair of the Friends and the chair and the vice chair of the COA, and at the time the secretary, but that's transitioned since. And there's also a transition on the Friends as to the individual sitting on that, in that group. That's an opportunity, again, I'm not telling the board, but I'm telling the public and Mr. Sanders that that's an opportunity for us to cross-share information, Mr. Chairman, as you know, between the Board of Selectmen, the Council on Aging, and the Friends as far as what each group is doing. And as you know, we have been working on a space needs study with an architect who has gone through, and they have sat and met with each department in this building, with exception of the library, because the presumption when we began that study was that the library would be going to a different building. It included the school administration, obviously included the Council on Aging. It obviously included other major departments as well, including, you know, to every office throughout this building. And they collected information. They also did hazardous materials studies on this building, and they reviewed also the DCU building that had been proposed. And at this point, they are gathering the information for further discussion. We're actually, Chuck, Cindy, and I are scheduled to meet with them tomorrow to discuss and receive some of the information that they've put together. I'm sure I'm missing some details, so Chuck and Cindy, if I...
Right. Well, just to respond to Mr. Sanders, and I don't want to, first of all, I want to acknowledge everything that you're saying in your frustration, because we fully understand where you're coming from. We know it's been years. I've looked up many of the reports and seen that have fallen by the wayside over the years. This board is very, very well aware of the pressing needs of the seniors and the Council on Aging, Department of Elder and Human Services. We've been, as Nina had said, we've been working for months with the architects. Chuck, myself, and Nina have been having, bi-weekly phone conferences with the architect firm. They've been keeping us up to date on their progress. It's just not as simple as just putting out an RFP or RFQ. We've been really trying to be systematic with our approach to this process, and I know it's frustrating because that is time-consuming. But we want to do this, and we want to do this right. There's many departments to take into consideration through this process, but the seniors are our number one priority, and I sincerely hope that you realize that. I'm being sincere when I say that. We have some great information that they've been gathering, important information that we need to know to make an assessment, make a determination about what we want to do, where we want to go with this. And we're hoping, we really can't wait to be able to share more of that information publicly. But I want you to know, we have been working on this for months. And we will continue to work on it until we see it come to fruition, because we understand the seniors can't wait anymore. I mean, Elder and Human Services is operating in 3,000 square foot of space. They should be operating in 15,000 square feet of space. And the seniors have been waiting long enough for their senior center. So I just hope that you realize that, Mr. Sanders. I fully appreciate, and I know the board does too, your frustration, and we hear you. But I want the seniors to know that we are working on this, and they don't need to beg. That's absolutely no need for that whatsoever. So we're looking forward, I think in January, we should have a more comprehensive report to
I
share
understand.
publicly.
We expected and we shared with the
For the
architect.
second week of January, I believe we were
Yeah,
expected to have.
so,
We had kind of wanted, just, you both know that, but we had talked with the architect from the beginning and saying that kind of as we projected out the timeline for this project, that we needed to begin public stakeholder conversations in January.
Right.
Between January and March, as we prepared for something actionable at this town meeting.
right, yeah. So,
Peter Fernandez from 26 hours. I concur what he says. I'm sorry. I thought he was going to get a heart attack today. He's so emotional. The question is, I know you people already put aside $3 million. Just be sure that $3 million will be not enough. If we buy that building, it's going to need a renovation. It's going to cost you more money. So you have to anticipate that there's going to be you have to take care of it. It's going to need a lot of work. Just to let you know, it's not only $3 million. You know that, don't you? $3 million they put it aside, it's going to cost you more if they're going to buy that building. There's going to have to be a new road there, an extra road, because you have an entrance, then you have to have an exit. It's going to be a lot of, and then there's going to be park only, not
Yeah,
for.
that's not, we're not specifically
okay.
looking at that particular building, we're looking at
Yeah,
a
okay.
solution. So,
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Sanders?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, George Sanders, 672 Grayville. I just want to make the comment, I'm on that town space need work group. We haven't had a meeting in God knows when. Whatever data you got or you've been collecting, I mean, if we want this to be transparent, why ain't the information being put out to the seniors so we know what's going on? Because as it stands right now, we don't know what's going on. Y'all have been doing whatever you've been doing, but the public doesn't know what is going on with regards to this item. All they know is that we put this money aside, and it's like, where it's lost. It's sitting in limbo so long until some people don't even realize the money is there, I guess. So my thing is that, to be transparent here, you ought to be feeding the data to us. If the engineers have came back and put data into you, we ought to know what's going on. We ought to know what's going on. We're the taxpayers, we ought to know what's going on. Thank you.
Mrs. Sanders, I appreciate that that comment, and I agree with you. We don't have a whole lot of data to share at this point. What we're hoping to is have a deliverable by the second week of January. And that's, to Nina's point, one of the things that we've set out is we've said, listen, we'd love to be able to do something by town meeting in May. May 2020 is kind of that's the finish line, not the finish line, it's the goal line for us. So we're trying to get information from them after they've sat down and, now, I will say that I agree that after going to the bazaar on Saturday and answering probably 10 or 15 different seniors that came up to me and said, where are we at with this? That's when I thought to myself, we probably should do some sort of an update, and whether it be at the meetings that you folks are having, or, just go to a friends meeting or a COA meeting, I'll take that on. But as far as having anything really deliverable, we don't have that right yet. So the RFP is still being executed on. They've done a number of interviews with all the department heads, and they've kind of had to go back and recreate the wheel from the previous study that we did. It's much more intense, much more inclusive, to Nina's point. They did hazardous materials to find out if we were going to repurpose this building. So it's not specifically just for the seniors, it's space needs as a whole, with our focus, as Cindy said, in priority being the seniors. So I'll own the part about us not communicating enough to the seniors, and I'll find out when that next COA meeting or the next joint meeting will be, and I'll attend that and share as much as I do know, with hopes that we'll be getting information from LLB, the architect. And they have been meeting kind of the benchmarks along the way for us, and that's where I feel like maybe I dropped the ball and I didn't communicate that back to folks and say, hey, we've been meeting with them on a regular basis, this is what they've done to this point, we don't really have any renderings or anything to share with anybody, but this is the path that they've gone down to this point. So I duly noted, and my apologies for that, but I think we can right the ship there, and I'm excited about what we're going to get back from them, because it's going to be actionable, and we'll be able to do something with that $3 million, and in all likelihood have to look to get more money to be able to execute.
Thank you.
Okay, board input. Cindy?
I don't have anything.
No. I just want to mention, today, Ilfano's making, Ilfano said that the public meal, 3 settings of meals. The last one had 22 people waiting for seats, over 300 meals served. And I want to obviously thank Ilfano's, the workers, and all the volunteers we had. We probably had 15, 20. Nina was there the full time I was. The chief and the deputy chief of both fire and water. I don't want to, fire and police. And there's so many people I'd leave out if I started to comment on each one of them, but what a chance for, what a nice thing that Ilfano's does for the public. It was just absolutely outstanding. It was well organized. The only thing that we fell behind on was that accident in 495 actually held that up today, because people couldn't get there to start the meals, because everyone was in traffic.
300 people was there.
Yeah, 300.
300.
Great.
Anything else? Okay, Church Meadows. Hey.
Hey,
Jenny, how are you?
I'm good, how are you? Jenny Earl. Karen's in Kennington.
I was at the last meeting they had, but the one they had before, when Jenny was there, some of the discussion at that point was, they wanted, and I'll let you take over in a second. The AgCom was very excited about getting this out for the next plant season. And of course, right now, and even probably back in November would have been the perfect time. The snow's down, but they want to get this going, and they want to make sure that they have a walk at the site and propose people who could do it. One of the things that was brought up at that meeting was that if the AgCom took complete control of the land and did the RFQ or RFP, whichever it is, then no one in any one of those families could apply for it.
Oh.
And since we have limited number of farms in town, one of the ideas I had, and I talked to Tom and I talked to Jenny about this, was that, if there would possibly be a way of doing this, so at least they have the opportunity to put an application in, and that's why it's back with the board. It's gonna be our choice in the, but I'll let you take it from there and
Sure.
give all the experts on.
Sure, so what we're working on right now is a management agreement for a farmer to come in and manage the land. It's actually not a lease, because at some point in the future, we're going to need to put a restriction on the property,
Okay.
which could likely make it Article 97 land, which means that you technically can't lease it, because that would be a disposal of Article 97 land. You need to put a restriction on it because you acquired this with CPA funding. But for now, we're just moving forward with this agreement to manage the property. And it looks very similar to a lease, they just don't have that leasehold interest in the property. So we've put together an RFP based on input from the town. This goes back over a year from when we started drafting this. We had input from the AgCom and from Anthony at the time. And we described the types of uses we'd like to use. You can use the upper field for some things and the lower field for others. And we've put in evaluation criteria for the board to consider. And so really the next step is, and we've put together a management agreement. And the next step is to issue this and, get it on the streets and get back proposals and then evaluate those and make a recommendation to the board to issue a contract. And I think the fastest way to do that is to authorize Nina and me to put on the final touches. If there's anything specific you want to see in here that's not already in here, you could let us know. But other than that, we just have to figure out dates and deadlines that comply with notice requirements, and that's stuff, that we can handle without further input from you all, and not having to, work on a public meeting schedule, to put those final touches on it.
Yeah, I don't know what the rest of the board, I'm fully in favor of that, because I think both of you at this point could, instead of having it come back to us, we're in a time frame now that we want to get this done. Then when you do that, would that also include the site walk?
Yep. We can do the site walk with day staff who, knows about the site. Yeah, all of that.
Okay. Now, we've all worked on this.
Right.
Any comments right now before I open it up?
Yeah.
Well, what are the general differences between a management agreement and a lease? The document that you had said non-price proposal.
Well, so, we would have a similar RFP for a lease and a management agreement. Basically, we've got in here a price proposal and a non-price proposal. The non-price proposal is, you're gonna ask them to describe what they want to do. There's different farmers will use the land differently. Someone might have it as a tree farm, someone else might grow a different crop. And they will probably bring different types of equipment and levels of experience. So that will all be in their non-price proposal, a description of what they do, who they are, what they bring to the table. And then the price proposal is, what percentage of the profits or, so something that they're going to share with the town. And then you will evaluate both and award it to the most advantageous.
Highest and best use, or whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't have to, it's going to evaluate both price and their non-price proposal. So it doesn't have to be the person who's going to give you the most money. But the biggest difference is that they won't have this real property interest
Right.
in the property.
I don't have any questions.
I was reading through the management proposal, and there's one paragraph that concerns me, and it was paragraph 12, which says the only livestock the company may keep on the property are poultry and small ruminants. I was wondering if you would be interested in adding something to that, like, unless otherwise authorized by the town or whatever, because there are things like bees and, that farmers might want to keep. I just adopted 2 small pot-bellied pigs, actually, that aren't for eating, but they're removing all of the bittersweet and other invasives from my property. It's really kind of cool because they dig up the roots and kill poison ivy, and they're also really cute and adorable.
Names?
But they're not small, they're Sally and Hank, and, but they're not small ruminants. And so I thought, obviously you don't want someone with a 200 hog operation on the field, but you might want to at least give yourself an out, like to approve, or if someone had a draft horse or something like that, that you could approve such things instead of just.
Case by
limiting it.
case.
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more, I get the point behind the poultry and small ruminants, but I think you want to not hem yourself in that way, or hem the farmer in.
It's completely up to you guys.
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
And
So
that's
I can
something
add that
you can work
language.
into.
I'm fine with that.
So assuming the board is comfortable moving forward as Jenny has proposed in terms of her and I finalizing the details, I just think it would be beneficial for us to talk a little timeline, just so the board has a understanding of some of the constraints that we're faced with in terms of procurement and the requirements we have in terms of the steps we have to take. So Jenny, correct me here, but typically the advertising requirements take 2 weeks at a minimum, which means that often you're needing to advertise 3 weeks in advance because certain publications require a week's notice. So there's a minimum of 3 weeks in that process. And in addition to that, then there's a submission deadline, then there's an evaluation that needs to occur after that. And when that evaluation occurs, based on Mass General Law and our bylaws, the Chief Procurement Officer, which in this case is our town accountant currently, our Director of Finance and Budget, needs to go through an evaluation. I'm certain that we could do that evaluation and make a recommendation, and the Board of Selectmen have the final opportunity, but I do anticipate we're talking comfortably, aggressively, 4 weeks would be aggressive, but I think we're talking about at least 5 weeks, and I just want to make sure that everyone knows that it takes time.
But if we stay in that 5 weeks, I'm happy with that.
Okay.
Because we've gone through that, we purchased this land, 5, 6,
Yeah.
7 years ago, and it's never been used in the purpose that we bought it for. So this is our first chance to finally get going, and if it takes 5 weeks to 6 weeks at this point, as long as we're ready to go in the spring, so someone can use the land, then.
Yeah.
And it would also be helpful, from my perspective, if I haven't misstated the number of weeks, Jenny, that the board kind of give me a sense of the priority. The board did discuss this specific subject in its goals session, so I rank this pretty high on priority.
Uh-huh.
But as far as, if this was the highest priority, close to high, if you could give me a sense of that, then we can, in terms of the work in the office as it comes through, to make sure, do you want this done as quickly as possible? If you do, then we will make this one of the number one priorities.
I think we have to, because of the,
Right.
with the growing season, at least this one before they run.
It's more time sensitive. Yeah.
All right, that's helpful.
Yep.
Did you need any other information?
No, I think, I'll make that change, and we can, we have to get it in the Central Register by Thursday, midday, but we can figure out all the dates, the most aggressive dates, and just plug them in.
Have to go back and discuss with the way they have it now.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
Good, let's keep it that way, for now.
Yeah, we can do
Did
it.
you need it for the next topic? I don't know what.
As long as we get this in place, then we can.
I just want something to grow.
Perhaps, yes.
Okay.
Would the board wish to take the license renewals out of order and any
Yeah.
specific license renewal while Jenny is here with us?
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's
Don't
fine.
know if I'll know much about these, but you can,
you gotta know more than me.
okay, you think?
And if we put you on the spot, it's Ivrea Fried in Tom Harrington's office that is the guru, so to
Yeah,
speak,
she's-
on this
she's good,
subject,
yeah.
but,
Because most of these, I'm not gonna, we should never
Are
call
these
them.
liquor licenses?
Yeah, or common victim's license, whatever,
I
but
see.
there's one in here that I have a question about. And I'm like,
So the specific question, if I'm not mistaken, is we have a all alcohol liquor retail license out there that is a store that's been closed for some time. And we're at the point in the process where we are obviously in need of reviewing for renewals. This entity has filed for renewal, and the board's question is whether we are required to renew at this point in time, correct?
Correct. Or if we renew, can we put something in there that we want to re-examine it within 2 months to find out what this applicant's actual intentions are? Because in my opinion, I don't want that license just floating out there. I want this board to have some control of it. If it's, I mean, if this person has a legit thing that he's going to move toward, then fine. But
Right, a business plan, too.
Yeah.
I think you're wrong.
Long-term
But I think you do have to renew, but I'm gonna ask Gabriel, because I think she might have actually,
My understanding that we have to renew, but we have up to 6 months to invite them in if they don't seem to be operating in accordance to with the license they've been issued. We can then invite them in and ask them for an update. And if we're not satisfied by the information that we're given at that time, then we can act accordingly.
That's my understanding as well. I need some clarification on the 6 months piece, but basically.
I don't know why that's jumping up,
Yeah,
right?
no, there is a 6-month piece that was mentioned based on training that Diane Dickerson had gone to, but we basically have been told that we do need to renew, and if we wish to ask them for an update, then we need to bring them in for an update and ask them for that, and then give them a time frame or give them a certain amount of time, and that may be where the 6-month comes in, where they have to produce something material, at which point we're then have an opportunity to consider revoking the license. But perhaps we can
Yeah,
move on
Grace
with
is-
some of our business as Jenny gets
yeah,
clarification.
either confirms, you do have to renew if the application's complete.
All right, so
Yeah.
renewal, we can find out about the other.
Yes, I mean, if the board is asking to institute a process by which we begin discussions with the license holder to determine what the path forward is from them or a
Yeah,
board's
maybe give them,
decision.
maybe renew and then give them, I don't know, 30 days.
We'll probably need to seek guidance from council's office, bring
Yeah.
it back to the board for action, and then
Just to see what the time,
institute.
but just, yeah, just to plan, maybe, I guess what I'm meaning is to plan in the short term rather than the long term, to have some follow-up mechanism with that applicant.
Yeah, she says.
That makes sense.
You can then hold a hearing to revoke for non-use, but that's separate from the application.
So, is the hearing, I'm trying to think of actionable steps to try to meet what Cindy's requesting. I would imagine, in order to notify them of a hearing, the board would need to agree on a hearing as an example, so.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, how much time frame do we want to give them before we want to post a hearing? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, give them time to act.
Answer the
Yeah,
question.
if
Yeah.
they're applying for the renewal, then
Yeah,
that's
like, give them
they're
time to
trying
get up and
reopen
running or
something.
whatever their plans are, and then, you know, what do we want that time frame to be? Do we want it to be 30 days? Do we want it to be 60 days? 90 days?
Right, and
So-
I mean, we could potentially draw up a letter to them, beginning that process, assuming that when I work directly with Ivrea, that she doesn't say that there's something actionable that the board needs to take on. So if the board wants to identify a timeframe at this point where you would like the owner of the current owner of the license to come in or have an update, then perhaps now you could discuss that and we can draft a letter to them.
Or do we want to give them 30 days or 60 days and then draft the letter? Like, give them a time frame.
I was just thinking
And
we
then
would
revisit it.
communicate that timeframe
Yeah.
by a letter, so.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, I don't know, though, as though it would serve your purpose if you're considering any type of situation where the board takes control of the license again.
Right.
I think that documentation would be helpful if that is the direction we ultimately end up going in. Perhaps that's not the direction that this process goes in at all, and the license holder, you know, revitalizes the business.
Right.
So in this case, just renew and,
I do think that based on what Jenny has said, based on what we've heard from Ivrea and Diane, I would recommend a renewal here today. But I would also say that the board could certainly continue discussions on this, and if you wanted to have a discussion on this, perhaps at the next meeting, which is only in a week at this point, we could put an agenda item on there and discuss further this specific
What do you want
license.
to do? Want to do that?
either that or make a decision tonight. What, you want the whole board?
What are your thoughts, Chuck?
These have to be, in theory, we want to have these in place by January 1st, right? So we've got other stuff on the agenda. I don't think there's going to be anybody that's,
Right,
I'm okay taking action tonight.
okay.
Yeah.
I just think that, why postpone this and put it on another agenda down the road?
I mean, I just meant that one topic to find out.
About that one specific?
Yeah.
I'm okay with holding them aside and taking
No,
action on that.
but,
I would
No.
say probably go through everything, as
go
Joe.
through everything. I'm just talking about, I'm making this more confusing than it should be. Just next month or something, send out a letter saying you have this much time to
Right,
let us know what your intentions are.
yeah, I would give them 30 days and then send out the letter and say, just give us an update where you're at and,
Okay, so, what I would propose we do is we move through all of these, license renewals for calendar year 2020 tonight. And then I would propose that we discuss how we move forward, because the board needs to make a decision. I can't
Right, no.
do something like that without a vote.
right,
The board needs to make a definitive decision on what action it wants me to take on its behalf. And so I would propose that we put that either on the agenda of the 16th, or if for some reason we're unable to pull that off, then the first or second meeting in January.
I would just put in January.
Okay,
yeah, okay,
we'll get something on the agenda to further discussions on the
right.
subject of the closed and license that's not being used.
right. Okay,
Thank you, Jenny.
All right, thank you, guys.
thanks.
Good night.
So we want to go through
Great
each one of
meeting you.
these
Thank
You
you.
too.
by, by license?
You have that? Trust.
Oh, yes. Yes,
Um,
we'll see you then.
See you in your job.
Yes.
Well, so the way the motion's written is that the approval is contingent upon satisfactory inspections and submission of required documents, fees, and payment of municipal charges, so, we don't have any reason to not renew any of these.
No, but I guess my question is, should we, for the public, mention what the license are, who the license holder is before we,
Oh,
I'd be glad to read the list if you wish.
that's fine, just,
I gotcha.
We have 4 wine and malt package stores on the list proposed for renewal. Common Convenience, Donlands Supermarket, J.W. Archer Incorporated, also known as Archer's Mobile, Littleton Convenience by J. Ram Kabir. Then we have 3 all-alcohol package stores, Fallon Wine and Spirits, Great Road Liquors, J.M. Littleton, also known as Littleton's One Stop Liquors. We have a number of all-alcohol restaurants, Anthony's Cold Fire Pizza, Chip Shots Pub Incorporated, Great Road Kitchen, Littleton Sub Shop, AKA Pub on the Common, Marriott Courtyard Boston Littleton, Point Hospitality, Masala Bay, O'Neill Cinemas, RSS Il Forno, Salute, Taka, Tavern in the Square, and Orchid Blossom. Then we have 1 club all alcohol for a proposed renewal, the VFW Post 6556. We have a number of common victualers that are non-alcohol related. Acton Toyota Cafe, Citgo Energy North, Dippin' Donuts, Dunkin' Donuts at Great Road, Dunkin' Donuts at King Street, Dunkin' Donuts at another King Street location, Shell Store, Intimate Moment Chef Service, Cavelicet Civic Association,
Good-
apologies.
good work.
Kariba.
Littleton Cafe, Market Basket, Menchie's Frozen Yogurt, Minuteman Campground, Moe's Southwest Grill / MDM Southwest LLC, Pizza Express, Energy North King Street Mobile, Starbucks Coffee, and Subway. Then we have a slightly over half a dozen car dealers. There's one Class 1 new car dealer, which is Acton Toyota of Littleton, and the others are used car dealers, specifically Advantage Automobile Investments, Broadway, by Edward Gukasov, thank you. Great Road Auto Sales, LLC, Jake's Auto Body, JL Realty Holding, LLC, Miller Automotive Services, Paul Ruthier, Ray's Classic Cars, and Triumph Modular 194. We have two valuable secondhand items. Locations, both are Assurance Gold LLC, one on Newtown Road and one at Great Road. And then finally, we have a innkeeper license for Littleton Inn.
I just have a couple of questions. Sure. So under the Assurance Gold LLC Countryside Trading, are they still operating? Have they submitted this?
Where are we?
Under the miscellaneous, on the back page, down by the bottom. There's two, there's one on 550 Newtown Road, and there's one at 287 Great Road. Did they, if they're on this list, does that mean they reapplied?
My understanding is that everyone has submitted information.
All right, the other one is on Salute. We don't have an address for them. I know that they're 1204 Constitution Avenue, but I would just ask that we make sure that that's inserted.
Sure.
It's just not any address, it's tied to that address.
Yep, absolutely.
1204 Constitution.
Thank you. And I also will note that your version may not have the VFW post. It may or may not. Diane may have
does.
updated it. The
She
175?
came down and
Great.
switched them out.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep.
So if there's no discussion, do we want a motion?
I don't have any more questions. You, Chuck?
I don't have any questions, you good?
Yep, I'm good. Oh,
I got it right now.
you do it.
Move the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the annual renewal of all licenses as attached for calendar year 2020 contingent upon satisfactory inspections and submissions of all required documents, fees, and payments of municipal charges.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Just since we're talking about renewals of all different licensing fees and all that kind of stuff, at one point in time, probably a year or more ago, we talked about where our fees were at, and it was felt that our fees in many areas were much lower than other municipalities. So I don't know what we want to do to take a look at that. Not that, not that this is going to be a huge
Right.
shot in the arm for us, but
Right.
if we're going up on residential taxes, and this is essentially another tax that would be passing on to some of the commercial businesses, but if a $25 common vic license that's what it costs in Littleton, but it costs $50 or $75 in a surrounding community, maybe we need to be a little closer to
Right.
that, and it does take some administrative time for Diane to prepare all these and for us to take the time to go through the licensing and whatnot. And,
Right.
certainly for our inspections, police, fire, building commissioner, to go out and take a look at these locations and make sure they're all in compliance. So, just want to put it out there so we continue the conversation. We've brought it up before, so not that I really want to be the guy that's known for raising taxes or fees, but I want to keep it on the radar so that we do, in fact, either cull a list and find out what other communities are doing so that we can find out where we are comparatively, or one of us takes it on as a challenge and says,
So we have talked about that, like you said, we've been talking about it for a while. So I had given Nina a list of all the fees, and it was like a two-sided list. I forget exactly which fees those were. But one of the things that we had talked about at one meeting was actually going back to the department that the fees pertain to, and maybe having them, they might look at something right off the top of their head and say, yeah, that's way out of line.
Right.
So other fees might require a little bit more research. And I know that our the town employees are already sort of inundated, but we thought maybe that was the first step.
Low-hanging fruit type of-
Low-hanging
yep.
fruit, but just to give them that list and just see what, if anything did jump out at them, and then otherwise maybe one of us has to do a little, maybe some fees or whatever require a little bit more research, like you said, Chuck.
Yeah. I think that's, if I recall correctly, that list was more along the lines of what it costs to pull a permit or, right, was it necessarily these type of licenses or?
You know what, honestly, I don't remember what was
more-
on it.
I think it was more the fees on the,
Yeah, I think it was, and I agree, some of these should be looked at.
Well, and the board had discussed that, obviously, in the discussion of the policies and regulations, and like Cindy said.
Right.
I think the board at the times, the sentiment was, we were understanding that departments were very busy, and again, this one's in our office, so this is not necessarily relating to other departments, this is our office more so than anything. But just speaking more large scale of all fees, that we would recognize that departments had their plates full and encourage and send out a message to tell departments know that the board would be receptive to a conversation as it relates to analyzing numbers and fees that we have in comparison to other communities. So we are going to be sending out a note to departments along that line. And I also, as a result of that conversation, Diane and I did speak as well about specifically the fees within the Selectmen and Town Administrator's office. And
Okay.
we do have it on a list of things before us that, would be for the probably midterm in evaluating and bringing forward.
Great.
And Cindy, you were going to send that document from,
Yeah, I need to send that to
Trouble
you.
with
I
that.
have all that.
I'm wondering, we can't be the first community that's said, hey, where are our fees at? Does the MMA have a list that we could just say, hey, is there a listserv or something like that that's out there that
you know what towns typically do? I've seen, I don't believe the MMA manages a list to
we
that
need to have
extent.
the Selectmen's Association
There you go.
sharing information?
I've seen some towns create a Google sheet or multiple sheets and then ask other towns to fill in their numbers. It's actually a process that towns go through on a regular basis, to your point, and we'd probably follow along and do something similar to that. But I don't think there's an active database of where fees are that I'm aware of. I haven't seen anything like that.
All right.
Well, let's keep it on the radar and wherever we
Yeah,
end
no,
up.
it's a really
It
good
does-
point.
It does play into policy to some degree, if we're making those kinds of changes.
Yep.
Okay, item number 5, which has to do with budget submission.
Yes, thank you. Early this morning, or as part of the morning, I sent out some documents that I'm not sure if the board has had an opportunity to look over yet, but wanted to share them as a starting place for discussion. The Finance Department is putting together this budget book, and these are the documents and information that will be contained in that budget book. That is not the final budget book. It is to be determined based on further discussions between the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee as to the final numbers. These are just a starting place, and hearing various comments throughout, the 6+ months that I've been with the town, I have formulated things. I've looked at actuals from prior years. I have looked at costs and increased costs and developed and formulated the budgets for the draft budgets, the proposed budgets, so to speak, for Board of Selectmen, Town Administrator, and other various budgets that fall under our umbrella, such as town meeting reports, the town council budget, and possibly another that I'm,
Select.
sorry, Selectmen's budget, thank you, of course. So,
Can I make a comment about the budget book? Historically, we have shown up on the Super Saturday or the Budget Summit or whatever we termed it. And we would show up and there would be a huge binder at each workstation or each seat. And historically, there'd be last-minute documents being slid into that binder. If we're truly trying to do this differently and we're trying to make changes and we're trying to correct some of the things that we've all been frustrated with in the past, I think if we got that budget book ahead of time, and it can be dated. I mean, these are all dated version 11, you know, so, and it's a living document, so that if we show up at another meeting, we have our budget book with us, we have it like from now until we finalize the budget. And if we all say, okay, pages 83 through 87, we have new documents to work off of now, you know, the Park and Rec has made some changes to theirs, we need to change those out. Versus us showing up on that Saturday and having a binder this thick. And I know there's been some changes made already, but it gives us the opportunity at our leisure to kind of go through there and say, okay, where have some changes been made? And I'd like, at first blush, I like the look of having a narrative and having kind of some history and some projections and what that variance is and that kind of thing. I would love to see us get more towards that and have something that is not just a binder that gets thrown in front of us that we can't digest, you know, $50 million in budget in front of us. And,
In one sitting, right?
yeah, I mean, the Panera's really good, but it's tough to digest all of that information, and, you know, essentially, we're making some decisions as to where we're headed with the budget that day. I like the fact that FinCom, under the guidance of Mr. Wilson, has changed it up a little bit, and we're gonna kind of look at the big, I referred to them in the past as, you know, the big rocks. And the big rocks for the departments are the ones that we're looking at on that Super Saturday, and all the other departments we're going to work with kind of on a more fluid basis. So I think if we had that budget book, it would enable us to, and I don't know if you're talking about budget book as a theoretical, or if in fact we would in fact get that budget book again.
As a matter of fact, the budget book is slated to come out on, or it's the 15th of this month. And so it's a few days away at this point. It might be the 16th because that's a Monday. I don't know. But, you know, I'm guessing Cheryl's going to get it out on the
Mid-December.
15th. Right. And so you would have the submissions, the initial submissions as the budget book. And as the process gets developed and as numbers get decided upon, or if we have some of those decisions, those would be folded into the final budget book, which would be distributed in March, and end of March, if I'm not mistaken. What happens, what documentation is available in between then? I imagine there would have to be some sort of vehicle where we would be able to provide those updates. But this, to your point, and hopefully this works, and if it doesn't, I'm sure that Cheryl and the finance team would be more than happy to hear suggestions. But the kind of concept would be an initial book, the live documentation that's used, perhaps raw sheets, I'm not sure, that would provide update numbers as needed, and then the final book. So you're not in a situation, as you had said, where you're receiving hundreds of pages in one day and then trying to reconcile changes. You'd have a considerable amount of time to review this initial budget book before the various budget meetings, and then you'd be a part of the formulation of the final budget book. So presumably, we won't have the challenges you mentioned, but naturally, I would also caveat that with, this is the first year we're going through it.
Understood.
There are gonna be areas where we can improve, and we would love to do that over the course of the next year, and your feedback is gonna be helpful in making those improvements for next year as well. Do you think that this initial book coming out this month, and
Yes.
then a final book for really the purposes of the public and town meeting is a suitable kind of structure?
Depending upon what's in the initial book, yes.
It's
I mean,
a lot of this stuff.
Okay, that's great.
It's more,
And-
it's a
and if
lot
we-
more of
yeah, if
this
we have a-
stuff.
If we have a certain level of detail and we can kind of dive down into it a little
Yep.
bit, that's going to be extremely beneficial, I believe, for us,
Well, we're already ahead of the curve
Right.
from what we've experienced in the past. It's great.
versus someone sitting in front of us on that Saturday saying, this is my wish list. You know,
Right,
So it's kind
yeah.
of,
Yeah,
we're
it's
faced with.
improved already.
you know,
Right.
We're faced with, we know that we have X million dollars to spend,
Mm-hmm.
and we get X plus Y
Right.
in requests, and we have to whittle something somewhere. So this helps us to kind of formulate a decision, to see how it aligns with our goals, which you included with this, and, you know, with our priorities. And so I think the sooner we can get it, as long as there's good information in there and good data that we can drill down into, I think it'll be beneficial. I'm excited to see the changes, and Cheryl's been a good communicator in that regard.
Lots of credit
The
to
whole team
Cheryl.
has, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of credit to Cheryl and lots of credit to Steve for the work that they've done on this already.
Anything else on this right now?
No, I'm good. This looks good. Thank you.
Excellent.
All right.
Look forward to it.
Number 7, Town Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a number of different items. Just going down the order, there's an EEA grant that I had shared with the board during the November 18th meeting, but which we were going to ratify at our December 2nd meeting, which was canceled. So it's on here for ratification and, basically retroactive authorization for me to sign that grant. It wasn't on the November 18th agenda, but I did discuss it, and the board was comfortable at the time. So I'd ask that the board vote to retroactively authorize the town administrator to sign the Energy and Environmental Affairs grant of $50,000 for transfer of development rights and form-based code mentioned at the November 18th meeting.
It's fine with me. Anyone else?
I'm good.
Someone make a motion on A.
Got it, this into you, got it.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
EEA grant, move that the Board of Selectmen vote to retroactively authorize the town administrator to sign the Energy and Environmental Affairs grant of $50,000 for transfer of development rights and form-based code mentioned at the November 18th meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, B, Green Communities.
Annually, the town is required to submit a comprehensive report to the Division of the DOER. Acronyms are escaping me today. But Department of, sorry, it's been a rather long day. But that I was asked to sign the annual report. It's mainly technical information relating to our prior grants, and there's a narrative that's contained in the board's packet that gives you a sense of some of the information that was submitted. A lot of technical information, a lot of details that are worked through predominantly by Diane and her team that she's assembled. Some of that includes school department and their assistance on this process, considering their the grants that they've received and they've spearheaded on their end throughout. So I'd ask the board to similarly vote to retroactively authorize me to sign the Green Communities Annual Report, which was due last week, which we submitted last week.
Any discussion? Seeing none. Need a motion for B.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to retroactively authorize the town administrator to sign the Green Communities Annual Report.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? C, accept gift donations, park and rec, community education.
Thank you. There were 2 donations to the PRCE. One was from Mr. Bobby Crunch, thank you, of the Mighty Oak Fund for $300 to Holiday Helpers, and $500 to, it's actually both were from Mr. Crunch, and $500 to the Youth Scholarship Fund.
Any discussion? If not,
I'd just say that Bobby's been, in the Mighty Oak Fund, have been very generous with any number of things. They were involved with the Jail for Jane, and many different scholarships for youth athletics to help families that aren't necessarily able to come up with the tuition or the fees associated with different things. And Bobby and the Mighty Oak Fund have been very, very generous to the community in a number of different ways. So I just want to give him and his organization a shout out and say thank you. And absolutely, I think this is something we want to accept.
Great. Ready?
Yep, you got it?
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to accept a donation from Mr. Bobby, is it Crunchy or Crunch? Crunch, of the Mighty Oak Fund in the amount of $300 to Holiday Helpers Fund and $500 to the Youth Scholarship Fund.
Second.
motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And D, accept donations to Elder and Human Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was a donation from the John C. Morrison and Eunice B. Morrison Charitable Foundation in the amount of $2,500 to the TRED Fund, and from the Friends of the Library in the amount of $100 to EHS in their gift account, and another $100 to the new outreach programs gift account.
Any
That's
dis-
great.
Any discussion?
No, again, just the Morrison Fund always seems to be there.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to accept a donation from the John C. Morrison and Eunice B. Morrison Charitable Foundation in the amount of $2,500 to the Tread Fund, and from the Friends of the Library in the amount of $100 to EHS gift account and $100 to new outreach programs gift account.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Last thing on the agenda is minutes from November 18th.
Just one note about the November 18th meeting minutes, which is a little bit uncustomary. While we did have a hearing on that night, I'm sure you would recall the soil removal hearing that we had. And in the case of hearings, we tend to be more detailed than ordinary, but in the case of this specific hearing, I did receive a request from Chuck looking for a comprehensive place that we could look for the discussions so that nothing fell off the radar in terms of this. So we went to a significant level of depth in creating those minutes so that there was a comprehensive account of discussions. Pointing out basically that it's not that customary that we would go into that level of detail.
Okay.
But that there is also a resource as we move forward through those discussions.
Yeah, so that's, if I may, I just wanted someplace where it was memorialized, what the conversation involved, what the commitment was from the resident and
Right.
from his attorney, that, you know, certain things were going to be taken care of, and I just, in conversations with Nina, this seems to be a good place to memorialize that, so that we have some place to go to and say, you said you were going to do this, where we at?
Right.
You know, so just we have some place to go back to. So there is a good deal of detail there, and I do appreciate that.
Certainly.
That's good.
Okay, any further discussion on the minutes from November 18th?
No. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the meeting minutes of November 18th, 2019.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the minutes of November 18th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Before we adjourn, just real quickly, just because we brought up green communities, and historically, this is typically, the schools seem to benefit from this the most, which is great. It's capital that we're not having to spend out of the budget from, you know, a different bucket. But I just want, whether it's Chris, Light and Water, any other department, if they have any type of projects, and we've done parking lot lights, and, you know, we've done LEDs and that kind of thing, so if there are any other opportunities, these are things we want to try to put in queue, so that, down the road, we'll have the benefit of tapping the Department of Energy Resources grants, because they pay pretty handsomely for some pretty significant savings that we end up getting by putting in the LEDs or doing heat exchangers and, you know, things like that. So just, if you could maybe send something out to the different department heads with a little summary of the green community or something like that, just saying, hey, this is something that comes up every year. If you know of something that may qualify, let us know.
Sure, if the board would like, we can do that, definitely.
You guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Fine with me?
And one thing I will say, since you brought up the subject of the green communities in terms of future grants, is that in this year's process, Diane had actually gone to a seminar, or I'm not exactly sure what the event was, and she and former Assistant Town Administrator Anthony Ansaldi had recognized that the town had been a recipient of the competitive grant program year after year. And it was a little unusual for a community to be such a strong participant. And so this year, Diane had she reported to me that at some of the training or seminar that she had attended, she had asked if the town were to match some level of grant, if we would be more competitive. And she shared that information with the former assistant town administrator, and they built some funding into the fiscal '20 budget, which was $20,000, which is showed up in the prior year's budgets, this current year's budget. When the DOER granted the town of Littleton funds, they actually said that the town of Littleton's process and their application was competitive because of that match, and that their process on their end was extremely difficult because of the limited resources and funding on their end. But ours rose to the top, even though we had been a recipient year after year, because of some of that,
Skin in the game.
that's right, the skin in the game. So, I would encourage the board, if we want to continue to do those kinds of things, to continue to look at potentially putting some funding aside, and that we build that in during the budget process this year.
Right. That's off to Diane.
Before we adjourn, Mr. Sanders,
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. Mr. Chairman, if they're gonna use abbreviation on stuff, they ought to have a footnote to say what the abbreviation is, like you got Tread Farms. What is Tread?
Sure, fair point.
what is trick?
Tax, that's I'm not the person to answer.
Reduction.
I always forget what it is.
Anyway, you get the point.
Yeah.
Mostly since we couldn't answer it, George. Get some-
I always
Tax
forget what it
relief,
is.
hold on.
It's a code. Special code.
My Google's not working.
Loud and clear, Mr. Sanders.
It's tax relief for those that qualify, it's for veterans, and so it's a good cause.
That's good to put a footnote down there, so
That's-
you guys said it.
Duly noted. I brought that up when I first came onto the board, Mr. Sanders. Mr. Bergman used to give me alphabet soup all the time, and I finally called him out, I said,
Well, if I use abbreviation, I always bracket. Right behind the word bracket, exactly what it is, you do it one time.
Right.
One time, yeah.
Yeah,
good point,
very good point.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second?
Motion made and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
And the